for coming tonight. This is a wonderful topic, very timely topic we have in our midst. Hope in the age of isolation is our topic for tonight. And we're really going to delve into kind of cura personalis, what that means for both Sister Colleen and Brother Matt, and for the larger group here.
My name is Sister Colleen Gibson. I'm a Sister of St. Joseph from the Philadelphia congregation, if you know anything about Sisters of St. Joseph. But I currently minister in Wellesley, Massachusetts. I serve as a pastoral care minister in a parish here, St. John St. Paul Collaborative. I'm co-host of the podcast Beyond the Habit. So like and subscribe, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm also a writer. So you can find me written in all sorts of places or read my poetry on Instagram. You can read some poetry. So that's a little bit about me.
Mine is Brother Matt Wooters. I am a Jesuit and I work at John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. Campus minister. I do a little bit of everything. And I'm originally from the East Coast. So it's fun to be with the East Coast Ignatian youth and the young at heart. So thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Perfect. Well, Brother Matt and Sister Colleen, thank you again for being here tonight. And we'll jump right in because I know this is a topic that is on everyone's mind, is this sense of isolation and really feeling as though, we're obviously on a Zoom call tonight. In person is something that we much prefer to engage in. But really, I'm going to start by asking you both, how do you define cura personalis? And I'll say, for those that may not know, cura personalis being the care of the whole person. And sometimes we look at this sense of taking and putting your mask on first before helping others. And maybe that's a way to look at cura personalis. But share just a little bit about your perceptions on that and how you define cura personalis in your own lives.
Go ahead, sister.
Oh, thanks, brother. He's going to copy off my paper now. So for me, I think cura personalis, as you said, Jim, it can kind of become like all about me. Like, how do we care for our body, mind, and spirit? How do we balance that out? There's this culture of like self-help and self-care. I think a key piece of understanding cura personalis is about the way we minister to one another, the way that we're in relationship with other people. So it's not about how do I care for myself, my body, my spirit, my being. It's how do I care for the person in front of me? How do I create space to care for the person in front of me? And so like making that distinction, I think when I remember I was an undergrad at a Jesuit school, and I remember as like a 20-year-old thinking like, I need to check every box. So like I'm on the rugby team, check, that's the body. Oh, I'm on the honors program, that's my mind, check. I'm involved in campus ministry, I go on retreats, check, there's the spirit. Oh, I'm doing all the stuff. I'm living right, like grade A+. I'm as good as Michael White on the dean's list of the cura personalis. But in reality, learning over time and like as my sense has matured of cura personalis is how do I care most fully for the person in front of me? And part of that is caring for myself. But another piece is how do I embrace the person in front of me as a whole person and as a person who is valid and has an integrity of spirit simply by being a child of God who I'm meant to care for and I'm meant to see God in.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would say something very similar, which is to say, how do we give best of ourselves? Not so we're like burnout and agitated. And any of you who's on this call who works with students or has children, you can give of yourself and be resentful about it. Like you little jerks, the chicken nuggets aren't warm enough for you. Like that's not what we're going for. Like how do you give so generously of yourself, but not to the point of depletion that you are also drowning? Because I think that can kind of have a backwards effect. And another thing I would say, it's about care, but Sister and I were talking before the call. This is always in the context of community. So we don't do cura personalis by ourselves on a Saturday at home alone. That's not what this is. That is something fine and good, but that's not this. And I think we do a disservice in Jesuit circles to make everything cura personalis, which is not true or right or authentic to our tradition. And I think it's important that placing ourselves in the context of community or parish or church or family is always with the operating model. The idea of this hyper-individualism is uniquely American, and that is not something St. Ignatius knew anything about as a Spaniard, part of a really big family. And so it was always in the context of a larger unit.
Brother Matt, I'm struck by your comments about community. And that is something that I think, coming out of the pandemic a number of years ago, one thing. But now we're in an age where for a lot of young people, and there are, a number of us here on the call, we're always on, the cell phone. We're always kind of communicating in those ways. And in-person, face-to-face communication in a community setting is so essential today. Both of you work in environments where, Sister Colleen, you're at a parish, and Brother Matt, you're at a college campus. What lessons can we learn from those two places, as the majority of us on this call perhaps are out in the world, not in a structured environment like a college campus or whatnot? So what are your, tips and tricks of living out that cura personalis in the way of community to really become better versions of ourselves?
Yeah, I think we all hunger for community, and we also don't know how to find it. I think that's a real juxtaposition of modernity, where we're far away from our biological families. My brothers live in California and Washington, D.C. I'm in Cleveland. So we're pretty spread out. I would say start with finding what you like the common thread of our shared lives. And it could be religious. It doesn't need to be. What do you love to do? Do you like gardening? There's a lot of people that like gardening. The gift of the internet is we can find those communities. The downside of the internet is a false sense of intimacy, because we're watching other people. We're just scrolling and watching other people live their lives, and we think we know them. Now, some people might know Sister from her podcast and feel like they know her. They don't know her. So sometimes there can be a false sense of connection with the internet. So how do we do that? How do we build community? Stuff like this. It's great to be on this call, this Ignatian Youth Network. This is amazing to have touchstones of where we gather. What are the campfires, right? We all need cultural campfires since we were cavemen. What are the campfires that we can circle up around to warm ourselves and tell our stories? And that has to be in person, I think, almost entirely. And so how do we find the in-person way to do that is a big question.
Yeah, I think there's something about tapping into established communities in one way or another. As Brother said, whether it's religious or not, there are places that exist already that are meant for in-person relating. And so whether it's a parish or a bowling league or a hiking group, or, a number of my friends, I have a friend who, is single and living her vocation in that way. And, she joins a hiking group. She joins a running club. She learned to knit because she thought, well, I like people who knit. So maybe it might be fun to build relationships in that space. But I think we come back to it over and over again. It's a risk, in person, and especially post-pandemic. There was a moment where in the pandemic, we all took a step back and we were all isolated, and we all bought into, what is the algorithm feeding me? My world is contained on the cell phone that shows me everything and helps me to hear voices that are in agreement with my own voice. How do we enter into spaces where we're going to be called to dialogue and have a different space and to make space for the person in front of us? I find so often in the parish, we started a young adult ministry, and people said to me when I got here, they were like, "Sister, there are no young adults in this parish," and I said, "Oh, they're here. You're just not looking. You're not paying attention to where they are." And it's remarkable. Every time we have an event, I give them, every time people come out, I give them kudos, because it takes a lot of courage to show up in a place where you are not known yet. And that's a big part, yet. By the end of our time together, you will know a little bit of the person in front of you. And so how do we enter into those spaces with a freedom, but also a courageous take to say, okay, I might not be fully known by the end of this 2-hour dinner that I sit with people, but did I make the effort to step outside of myself, to meet the other person? That sense of cura personalis. Was I met by the community I entered, and did the community meet me? And we see that over and over in these spaces. In a parish, there are all sorts of social groups built up, but in your workplace, it takes a risk to reach out to somebody and ask them about their day, to maybe, wade into a topic that is something other than the weather. To learn.
And you know how I do that?
How?
One of the ways that I do that, I ask people if they want to be friends in real life.
Ooh.
Do you want to be friends in real life? And they know what I mean. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have this shared church or work or whatever, and I ask, do you want to be friends in real life? And they're like, okay, you know, like it offers the invitation.
Yeah, I think like a cup of coffee, like I'll say, can we go get a cup of coffee? And I only have 45 minutes. So that's all I got, but I want to give it to you. I want to spend some time with you. So how do we do that? And like for myself, like naturally introverted, not like Brother Matt will just walk up to people. I know. I'm like, oh, I don't know. People, I'm a little iffy here. But to say like it pays off. It usually pays off. And the significance it has to people when you acknowledge, like saying hi to people, you know, they recognize that you recognize them.
I have and I'm churning in my mind as we're talking here, and many of us probably belong to a parish of some kind or in college or whatnot in our small groups. Not only is it about the responding to a community and entering into it, but it's also the invitation to come into a community. And I dare say a lot of us on this call are involved in these communities, but see around us friends, family members who are kind of, I don't really know if I want to do that. If you said, hey, you want to come to Mass with me on a Sunday? It's a young adult Mass and I'd love to have you there. Or, I'm doing this bake-off at school and I'd love you to bake, you're a great baker. Why don't you bring your dish? And there's that kind of, that steer of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're asking me this. I've never in a million years. Talk a little bit about how you both in your ministries, how you encourage people to that invitation to respond.
Yeah, I think there's an authenticity that goes with it. I think every parish and every religious order claims to like young people. I also don't think they act in a way that likes young people. Like, I think our own hypocrisy is like, we want a vibrant, diverse parish. We want a vibrant, diverse club. But it doesn't feel that way, right? So how do we do that? I'm very conscious of my friends. All my friends have little kids now. Are people staring at them if babies cry? And are they staring at them to help, or are they staring at them because they can't hear the priest? If we're being honest with ourselves, our churches don't always have a really good track record of welcoming children. And so that's something small that I'm very keen on, is how do we act in these spaces we claim are welcoming, which may or may not be the case. And also, like, you got to meet people where they are. If people feel the church is not for them, or they feel far away or hurt by the church, where are the spaces that you can meet? What are the neutral spaces that might lead to that? But I think sometimes people need to be shown a carrot first. Like, hey, yeah, I'll meet you at your whatever yard sale. And then that can turn into something else. But I think that's just a really good invitation and a good reminder of how do we do that, and where do we do it, and when do we not do it well,
Yeah. How do we how do we take interest in the people in front of us? Like, that's a huge piece. It's like, people could come to us and we could say, well, this is what we're talking about, and this is the schedule that we've set, and let us tell you all about the things that we do. What if you told me about yourself? Like, what if you told me about what you're interested in? And creating those spaces, because then people feel like, oh, you see me, you value me. I had a 13-year-old in the parish say to me the other day, she's like, oh, you know everyone. I was like, no, sad to say, anybody who's here from the parish, like, I forget people's names all the time, but can I smile and can I remember a fact about someone to make that space so that people can enter in? And as we're building community in those small spaces, it's everyday conversation that says, I'm here for when you need me later on. I'm here for a deeper conversation later. But that availability that's provided in all of these spaces.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These are great, and I think at the heart of community building too is really not only meeting people where they're at, but also understanding that not everybody has a vulnerable spirit. People are can be kind of shy to talk about some deeper things, but I also think that vulnerability opens the door to a lot more comfort and compassion and kind of finding joy. So maybe share a little bit about how you define, maybe setting an example, cura personalis in your own life, care of the whole person, whether that's learned experiences for you both, or maybe a definition you'd like to offer up to everyone else here tonight.
Before we logged on, Sister and I were talking about hope and reasons for hope. So I'd love to hear what you think, Sister, about what's hope for you. if we're aiming towards hope, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think, well, community gives me hope, but hope is at its essence, hope is a sustaining virtue. Like, I'll get theological on you for a moment. Like, hope is a theological virtue. We don't make it happen. We just show up and God shows up for us. And so in community, we can sustain that. But like a sense of hope being, that's prophetic in this world. It's really easy to despair. It's really easy to say, oh, I just need to go with the flow. But hope ultimately points us towards the kingdom of God. It points us towards kinship with one another. And I think that's where cura personalis and hope overlap. This care for a community is that we're building relationships with people, which gives us hope that God is doing something larger and that we don't need to do it on our own. And so even that sense of building community, we can do all the things in the world to try to build community. God is going to pull through in the end. God is going to invite us to take those risks. And if we follow the Spirit's lead, we might be able to take the leap and find a deeper hope in that space. But I find like in community, it's when people can share about that work of hope or the times of despair. But to build that in community, I think there's a piece of that. So hope is a very intangible thing, but it's sustaining, is prophetic, and it points to something larger than ourselves, which is what cura personalis does. That it's not just about us, it's about God and God working in us and in relationship. Do you have a better definition for hope, Brother Matt?
Better than you, sister? Never. I would say that that hope is intangible, but signs of hope are always tangible. Is that like hope can feel like, I don't know, like Pollyanna, glass half full thing. But that's kind of like cheap. On Friday, I went with 20 of our students to feed the homeless in Cleveland. Their peers are all drinking beers or at frat parties or something. And 20 college kids and I made food and gave out food to homeless people. How countercultural that is so powerful to me. And things like this happen all over the place. I think something I'm really drawn to in, especially a political year, I'm really drawn to like what's happening in real life. Like, I don't have control really of climate change. Like that feels like too big. Like I don't really know what that is. Or insert an issue that you care strongly about. It can feel intangible, and then it can actually lead to despair because you can spiral into like, well, the world's gone to shit. Like I can't handle it anymore. But the practical, tangible responses to darkness and despair, where there's generosity, where there's sharing, where there's showing up, that's powerful to me. And I'm so grateful to my students for this, this invitation to go with them. They go all the time. And so I think that's a good check on our own mental thermometer. Like, have you just been scrolling all day? Or like, can you sit on your neighbor's porch, or can you bring them a cup of coffee? Like, it's so small, but it's real life. It's real life. Can you help an older neighbor shovel, or whatever something very practical is? I sometimes think practicality is a sign of hope in a dark world.
Well, and I think like those small acts, Matt, they draw us out of ourselves. Like it gets us out of our own way. And so then we can buy into the larger promise of what community offers. But sometimes you just got to do the small stuff and you got to get dirty doing it. But it's immeasurable, the results that come back, or like the positivity. That hope is not like an optimism, but it's also a belief in humanity and finding meaning. And by, getting somebody a pair of mittens, or saying, oh, can I help you move this weekend? Or do you need somebody to eat with? Or can I bring an extra salad to the potluck so that you don't have to bring something? Like it is like an offering of hope. It's a small act that creates space for that to happen.
Yes, Sister Colleen, I was going to say random acts of kindness. And I think sometimes for those that are educators or people involved with students or even a civic or parish organizations, so often it can feel like, oh my gosh, I got to be big picture. I got to be like Brother Matt, you said, take 20 students or take 20 of my peers and go to a soup kitchen or something like that. And it can seem overwhelming. It can kind of be like, because you're going to find truer joy in those experiences of service and giving of yourself. But sometimes it can feel overwhelming, as though, oh, I have to be the organizer, I have to be the community engagement person here and doing that. But Sister Colleen, you talk about, these random acts of kindness and small acts of kindness. So when we're looking at kind of balancing our lives as human beings, what's a happy medium? That is a little bit of both, a little bit of the random acts of kindness mixed in with some larger community organizing, or what do you see that works? And without burning yourself out, because I think burnout can also be a big thing in these times.
Well, I think a piece of it comes down to what's an honest discernment of, what's my capability and where is my, like, if I was going to take a dipstick of the oil level of my hope, where am I at? And being honest with God in prayer and in conversation with people to say, what do I need right now? And what's going to help to jumpstart that push? And sometimes it is big acts to make a difference. And sometimes it's small acts. And sometimes it's simply the act of inviting other people. Like, I might not actually accept the invitation, but to be invited to do something is a recognition and is a spark to relationship. And so I think it's the both and the small acts help to build larger acts on top of them. So we can act, I think, especially at this moment in time, in this age of isolation, in the political climate that we're in, small acts and local acts are where hope can do its most prophetic work and the most critical work. Is how can I affect the person in front of me, the community, the local community that I belong to, while also remaining plugged into the larger global dialogue that's happening. But there's a tangibility and a realness to whether it's small acts, person to person, acts of charity, or acts of justice in your local community. But I think it's always coming back to that space of prayer and relationship with God, and bringing even those acts back into that space of how am I praying with all of those things? Because that's going to build my relationship with God. It's going to call me back out into community so that I don't get stuck.
That's right. And with Lent coming up, sister, I'm thinking like that's a great season of structure that we can tap into, right? That like what is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving? What might be the invitation there? What might be the invitation to check in with others? I think all of us, those of us who were born Catholic, have this like really, really boring sense of Lent. That it's like, I'm going to give up chocolate and not eat meat on Fridays. Kind of like, okay, fine. But like, sorry, some sort of marching band going by my office door. But what might be a different way to think about Lent in terms of community building? In this Holy Year of Hope, this is the Holy Fathers, this is the Jubilee of Hope. It happens once every 25 years. It's a huge deal. What if we lined up Lent towards hope, right? I'm going to fast from social media because that brings out my not best self. I'm going to give blood. For those of us that are healthy, you have blood in your veins. It's just sitting there. It can go help other people. Like sometimes we think of giving as only the homeless man next to us. I'm like, what if prayer, fasting, and almsgiving turned into something different? Do you have one sign of hope of how do we do it without overwhelming ourselves? I have a couple group texts, one with my siblings, my family, and one with some friends. And I just asked them last week, I said, what's going great for you guys this week? Or send me a picture of something that brought you joy. No, suddenly my feed is now, my texts are now flooded with like, oh, there's a baby and there's a flower and there's a cup of coffee. And it's just little points of connection, super low lift. And it jump-started a conversation of like, what's going well in our lives. So like, we don't have to it doesn't have to be huge to be a spark of hope.
Well, Matt, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. But I think one of the things we need in so many ways is a lot of laughter right now in this world as well. And as we kind of close up our time together tonight, I thought it was appropriate. There's a blog writer who writes on Ignatian spirituality a lot. He came out with kind of his topic today was finding hope in troubled times. So very timely for our call tonight, our time together. And he talks about a big belly laugh and really leaders in our world, friends in our world, that sense of laughter and really permeates joy. And so I think it goes without saying that we're ending tonight on that note of finding those moments when we can find joy, whether it's texts and, people responding to that question of where are you finding joy today? Or laughter, and he ends by talking about the theologian Karl Barth, and notes laughter is the closest thing to the grace of God. And how true is that, in our time right now? We need a little bit more of that from our leaders. We need it from each other. So I think it's important to have that laughter in leadership. But share with us to kind of close out, Sister Colleen and Matt, what would your kind of closing points of wisdom be as we kind of close out this conversation tonight? What do you want to impart on the crowd here?
I think, one of the things I would offer as I was reflecting on kind of all of this cura personalis and community is that, like, as humans, we're meant to be in community. As humans, we're built for hope. Like that, it's baked into our DNA. And so why not embrace it? Why not embrace, as you said, Jim, like the laughter? Why not embrace relationship? Because we're not meant to suffer through life. We may meet suffering along the way, but hope and relationship help us to endure, help us to be sustained, help us to excel and move towards what we're meant to be and to become a better version of ourselves. And so I think holding on to that of, like, what does it mean to be human? It means to find meaning. It means to live out hope. It means to laugh and to love and, all of those wonderful things. So how can I, as an individual, embrace that and allow the communities I belong to call me to that?
Turn off the news. I would just say this idea that we need to, like, always be consuming news is also a lie. That, like, the media companies and the algorithm make money off of our eyeballs, and it drains us of hope. I think back to when I was little, when we really only knew what was happening at 5 p.m. when we turned on Tom Brokaw. That wasn't so long ago, So now we're in this, like, constant update thing, and it can trigger a fight or flight response in our brain. I would say, watch your news consumption. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for us. And it can drain us of hope, because guess what they're not going to make is, like, the elderly couple that knits blankets for the, like a newly deceased, like, all the little signs of hope in our parishes, in our community, are not on the news. So turn off the news and notice where your body is, right? Where's your body? Where's your prayer? Where's your heart, your head, and your hands? Because, like, that's where you'll find hope.
Well said. Amen to that from both of you. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation, a timely conversation. And again, thank you all for being here tonight, all of you who joined in.